Good Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome back to another video, and welcome to March. So, got a couple of videos that I want to film tonight, and the first one is a late one. So, right now, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the 12 movies I watched in February. So, February was a very slow month. I was even surprised I even watched 12 movies. I have four new releases, and pretty much the rest were rewatches. And a lot of these rewatches are comedy classics. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing started with the first movie I watched in February and my first new release, Argylle. And this was the new spy thriller directed by Matthew Vaughn that has a star-studded cast with Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Bryan Cranston, Catherine O'Hara, John Cena, Dua Lipa, Henry Cavill. So, a lot of people were mixed on this movie, but I personally really enjoyed it because I think Matthew Vaughn is the director that has a great style to watch. He's the director of the Kingsman franchise and Kick-Ass. This movie was tailor-made for me. But essentially it's about this woman who lives in a fantasy world, and she's an author that makes this fantasy world a reality. So she is responsible for the Argylle series, which is a spy series. Turns out she might actually be a spy in real life. So I did enjoy the action, and I really did enjoy the movie as a whole, but I don't think it's as good as like Kingsman or Kick-Ass. I really do enjoy those movies quite a bit. And the story was kind of all over the place, and there were so many twists and plot points that need to be brought back if they make a sequel, which there is a little mid-credit scene teasing a sequel, but unfortunately this movie bombed, and a lot of people, like I said, were mixed on it. I guess I'm on an island because I really did enjoy it, but that was Argylle. Next up, Airheads. And this was continuing with my Film in 94 series. You'll see a couple more in this video. But this was a comedy that was very underseen by me, that was technically made for me. So it stars Brendan Fraser, Adam Sandler, and Steve Buscemi as these three best friends who are trying to make it big in a rock band, and they take a radio station hostage. All they want is for the radio DJ to play their song, but hijinks happen and they end up going to jail for it. It's a really fun screwball comedy that is known, but a lot of people forgot about it. So I do consider it to be a cult classic. But that was Airheads. And speaking of cult classic in the making, Lisa Frankenstein was up next. And this movie surprised me very much. I think it was one of the better movies that came out this month. And you'll see later on in this video that this month was not good at all. But I do think that Argyle and Lisa Frankenstein were the two best. But anyway, moving on. Lisa Frankenstein is a new horror comedy written by Diablo Cody and directed by Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter. And this is the story of a lonely teenage girl who is obsessed with death. And she goes through like this tragic point in her life, and she feels very lonely. So she has a fascination with this tombstone that features a teenage boy that she falls in love with. So one night, a lightning strike happened, resurrecting the boy of her dreams. And this movie was very weird and very dark. It gets very dark near the end because she has this lust for killing innocent people to rebuild her corpse boyfriend, I should say. And the ending, very, very bleak. But this is basically Edward Scissorhands in Gen Z mode. I've heard a lot of people compare this to Edward Scissorhands, Heathers, and even Beetlejuice. But I really did have a lot of fun with this movie. And I enjoyed the 80s vibe to it. So that was Lisa Frankenstein. Moving on, a wild card movie. Like I said, I have a bunch of wild card movies coming up. But here's one of them. I rewatched Dawn of the Dead 2004. And this was Zack Snyder's directorial debut. And it's one of the better horror remakes. So this is the direct remake of Dawn of the Dead from 1970, I want to say 77 or 78. I'll look that up. But the zombie apocalypse is in force, and you have like a group of survivors who take refuge at a shopping mall. So basically, they just fight to survive the apocalypse. I really enjoy this movie. I know Zack Snyder's not for everyone, but this thing is brutal and very gory. And not to mention that opening scene is terrifying. But I really do enjoy this movie quite a bit. So that was Dawn of the Dead 2004. Followed by technically I didn't finish this, but I've seen it so many times I just had to like put it on this list. But I rewatched Major Payne right before the Super Bowl, And this is a comedy classic from 1995. I've seen this movie hundreds of times, but this stars Damon Wayans right there, and Karen Parsons is the love interest. You'll know her from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This movie is basically a parody of war movies with kids. So, Major Payne right here. He is a decorated major in the army, and he gets discharged, and he is looking for a new job. So his general tells him that there is a job at a military academy. So this whole movie features him like training these boys to become all they can be, and they prepare for the military games. This movie is so quotable, and it is actually very edgy for a kid's comedy. My kind of humor, and I love this movie. So that was Major Payne. If you haven't seen it, watch it right now. But I can go on about this movie for an entire video. But I'm not. But that was Major Payne. Followed by the next movie I watched for my Film in 94 series, The Mask. And this stars Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz. And this is an adaptation from a Dark Horse graphic novel series. This is about a shy, inept banker who is ignored by the entire world, but he finds this mysterious mask one night, and he puts it on, and he develops the power of Loki. But this mask only works at night. There is a lot of zaniness to this movie and a bunch of cartoon references. So naturally, this works as a Jim Carrey comedy. I really do enjoy this movie quite a bit, and I do believe that it is smoking. So I do have a full review on Airheads and The Mask and the next movie I'm going to talk about here in the next couple minutes. So if you want my full thoughts on these movies, check them out. Be my guest. But moving on, my last two February new releases, and I did these as a double feature a couple Sundays ago. First one is Bob Marley, One Love. And I was very curious about this movie, and I thought it was just okay. Now, I don't know much of anything about Bob Marley, but this movie left me less desired. But it did have an interesting story, but I just wish the story was better. So essentially, this goes to where Bob Marley was almost assassinated, and he has this idea to put on a peace concert in Jamaica. But this also chronicles the creation of Exodus, which I'm assuming that it's his most well-known album, and that's the entire movie. I did like Kingston Benedict as Bob Marley. He really did a good job, but I do wish that the script was a little bit better. So, this movie was just okay to me. That was Bob Marley, One Love. That next movie was Madam Web. Yeah. This movie was easily the worst movie that I saw this year. Not only movie wise, but superhero movie wise. This movie was just garbage. And it was kind of a disgrace to Marvel. But essentially this stars Dakota Johnson as Cassandra Webb, and she's like a paramedic who works with Ben Parker, and she develops these powers to let her see the future. And she meets up with like these three girls, and sometime down the line they all have spider powers. But the movie is so dumb that it gives you like glimpses of these three girls in costume. It doesn't even happen in the movie. And she tries to avenge her mother's death by hunting down Ezekiel Sims, which he's kind of like an evil Spider-Man. And this dude, I had no idea what he was saying half the time because it never even focused on his mouth talking. And then he gets killed by Pepsi. This movie was horrible. If you want my full thoughts, I actually went into detail about this movie, and it was a rant view. It was definitely a fun video to discuss. So, that was Madam Web. But moving on, my next movie was Basketball. Yeah. This stars Trey Parker and Matt Stone. If you know who them guys are, they are the creators of South Park, and this is their first movie. This was released in 1998, so South Park would have only been like a year old when this movie came out. This is the story of two best buds who create a new backyard game called Basketball. And it is a hybrid sport that has the rules of basketball and baseball, obviously. And essentially, the opposing team has to psych out the team who has to shoot to score. And this movie is just silly, but it is very hilarious. And it's definitely one of the better Zucker parody movies. I really enjoy this movie quite a bit, and it's been a while since I watched it, so I just threw it on. But not to mention, you also have like Jenny McCarthy and Yasmin Bleeth in here as the two love interests. This movie was just fun. So that was Basketball. Followed by the final movie I watched for my Film in 94 series in February, Blank Check. You guys remember that one? So, this was a Disney movie that stars this 11-year-old kid who wishes for nothing but money on his birthday coming up. So he almost gets hit by this guy, and the guy got out of the car and signed him over a blank check. So the kid takes it to the bank and wishes for $1 million. And all of a sudden, this kid thinks he's super, super rich. Turns out, money isn't everything. So he goes crazy with his riches, and he comes up with this alter ego named Macintosh. So he also rents a house, and he comes up with like the best party ever for an 11-year-old. That's this movie. But what makes this movie even creepier is that this 11-year-old kid has a crush on a 30-year-old bank teller. So he starts falling for this woman, and it's the most awkward relationship that I saw in a kid's movie. It's weird. But this kid learns his lesson in the end, and he confesses everything, but he still comes off scot-free. This movie was fine, but it's very generic. So that was Blank Check. Followed by, you guys are going to laugh at me, but I don't care, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. For the 5 millionth time. And this is kind of like the story end of Tommy Jarvis. And this picks up directly after A New Beginning, where Tommy Jarvis and his friend goes to Jason's grave to make sure that he's dead for real. But a lightning strike resurrects Jason, and he's back on the hunt for those horny teenagers. You know, Friday the 13th, there's more killing and more hilarity. But oddly enough, this one has very little sex in it. It's probably like the cleanest Friday the 13th movie, but it is the most hilarious one because Jason doesn't know his own strength in this movie. There's a point in this movie where you have like this group of co-workers who play like a paintball game, and he grabs this dude's arm and gets the machete from him. He just yanks the arm off and impales the dude's face on a tree. Yeah. And then he twists the head off of one of the camp counselors, and he just says, But it's silly, and it's Friday the 13th. It's one of my favorite horror franchises. It's a comfort franchise for me. But he also gets some pretty kick-ass songs by Alice Cooper in here. So that was 1986's Friday the 13th, Jason Lives. And the final movie I watched in February. I rewatched Dune 2021. So I rewatched this to prepare for my Dune dual review, which you guys will definitely see here in a minute. But I haven't watched this thing since it premiered on HBO Max in 2021. Only time I ever watched it. And I gotta say, this time around, I enjoyed it a lot better. This movie is Star Wars before Star Wars even happened. And it has that epic grand scale of Lord of the Rings as well. Which I think this is more like Lord of the Rings in space. But this is about a prophet by the name of Paul Atreides who escapes from the siege of the Harkonnens, which are the bad guys. And this part is just basically the rise and fall of House Atreides and Paul's escape into the desert to befriend the Fremens. So, this movie is kind of divisive on the ending, but this story is so massive, there's just gotta be a lot more to it. But the way this movie ends is Paul is with the Fremens and he is trying to exact his revenge on the fall of Atreides. So, in Dune Part 2, you'll definitely get more of that. So, I'll go into a little bit more when I do my Dune dual review. So stay tuned for that. But I really did enjoy this movie quite a bit. And those are the 12 movies I watched in February. So I definitely like my rewatches a lot more than some of the newer movies that I watched this month. But March is definitely going to have a lot of great movies. I saw Dune Part 2 on Friday, and I'll definitely have my thoughts about that here pretty soon. Man, you got like Imaginary, Kung Fu Panda 4, Arthur the King is coming out, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and Godzilla Kong A New Empire. Lots of stuff. And already this month sounds a lot better than January and February combined. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in a few minutes for my Dune dual review. Adios. Peace.